Welcome to Super Showdowns, the ultimate destination for epic battles and legendary showdowns. Join us as we put iconic superheroes, villains, and mythological figures against each other in thrilling matches of strength, strategy, and skill. The summoning of Titans. The city trembled under the weight of its own dread. It had been a week since the first reports of unexplained gamma surges began trickling out of AIM's secretive laboratories hidden beneath the metropolis. People dismissed it at first, chalking it up to the usual corporate experimentation, the kind that never seemed to affect ordinary lives. But the headlines changed overnight when a district was leveled without warning. A mysterious green blur was spotted amidst the chaos, roaring like a beast unleashed from the depths of the earth. Bruce Banner, the man eternally chained to the Hulk, had tried to stay away from trouble. He had wandered into the countryside after his last rampage, hoping to bury himself in solitude. But the gamma energy, like a siren's call, reached him even in his exile. It was not just a whisper, it was a scream. Something powerful and unstable was brewing, and it was his responsibility to ensure it didn't spiral out of control. Miles away, across the ocean, another force stirred. Cain Marko, better known to the world as the Juggernaut, was basking in the quiet solitude of a mountainside village in Eastern Europe. He had no enemies here, no prying eyes judging him as either hero or villain. To these people, he was simply a protector, a giant who occasionally helped lift trees or move boulders. After a storm, for once in his tumultuous life, Cain felt a shred of peace. But peace for Cain Marko was a fragile thing. In the middle of a starless night, the crimson gem of Cyttorak began to pulse in its resting place. A surge of ancient energy coursed through Cain's body, searing his mind with visions of chaos. He saw a city consumed by destruction, its skyline lit with the emerald glow of rage incarnate. Cyttorak's voice, deep and booming, resonated within his skull. A challenger has arisen, Cain Marko. His strength threatens my dominion over unstoppable power. Prove your worth, my avatar. Confront this beast and show him the meaning of inevitability. Cain's eyes snapped open, the vision still lingering in his mind like an unshakable nightmare. He didn't need an explanation. He had been chosen, once again, to uphold Cyttorak's will. It was a duty he both relished and despised. With a reluctant sigh, he donned
Hey you, don't just watch. Subscribe please.
His crimson armor, the metal shimmering under the pale moonlight. The Juggernaut had been summoned. Back in the city, Bruce Banner carefully navigated the ruins of AIM's secret lab. The air was thick with smoke and the sharp tang of chemicals. His sharp mind pieced together the puzzle as he examined the shattered remains of containment units and experimental reactors. AIM had been reckless, experimenting with gamma radiation in ways even he had never dared. They were trying to replicate his transformation, his power, and it had gone horribly wrong. Idiots, Banner muttered under his breath. But before he could finish piecing together what they had done, the ground shook beneath him. A low, ominous rumble rolled through the air like distant thunder. Banner froze, his heart pounding. The Hulk stirred within him, sensing a threat before Banner could even comprehend it. From the distance, a figure emerged, and it was as though the earth itself quaked in fear. Juggernaut walked toward him, each step a thunderous boom that made the cracked ground tremble. He was an unmissable presence, a colossus clad in crimson armor, his helmet reflecting the flickering flames of the ruined city. His very aura screamed dominance, a force of nature that could not be stopped. The two men locked eyes, one a frail scientist, the other a living embodiment of brute power, but neither of them would remain as they were for long. I was wondering when you'd show up, Banner muttered, clenching his fists as he felt the transformation begin. His skin rippled, green veins bulging as the beast within clawed its way to the surface. Juggernaut tilted his head, almost amused. "Sitarak told me you'd be strong," he said, his deep voice carrying easily over the distance. Let's see if you're strong enough." The transformation was complete. The Hulk roared, his voice a thunderclap that sent birds scattering from miles away. The ground around him cracked as he stepped forward, muscles coiled with raw power. "You think you can stop me?" Hulk bellowed, his voice shaking the air. Juggernaut smiled, the corners of his mouth curling into a grin of pure confidence. He lowered his head slightly, his massive shoulders rolling as he prepared to charge. "You're not the first to think that. You won't be the last." And just like that, the fight began. Juggernaut barreled forward, his momentum unstoppable, his every step leaving craters in the ground. Hulk leaped to meet him, the two titans, colliding with a force that sent shockwaves rippling outward. Buildings that had already been teetering from earlier destruction collapsed entirely, and the few remaining civilians in the area fled in terror. But neither Juggernaut nor Hulk noticed. They were too consumed by the fight, two primal forces battling for supremacy. Each punch from the Hulk sent shockwaves that cracked the streets, while every charge from Juggernaut threatened to split the earth itself. This was not a battle for the faint of heart. It was a war of gods. The city groaned under the weight of their battle. Two unstoppable forces collided again and again, each strike ripping apart the fragile remnants of civilization that surrounded them. The Hulk, a juggernaut of rage and raw power, was a force of nature. But Cain Marco was no mere mortal either. He was a force of his own, fueled by the crimson gem of Sitarak, the embodiment of unstoppable momentum. The first few exchanges were brutal and almost evenly matched. Hulk threw punch after punch, his massive fists crashing into Juggernaut's armor like meteors. Each blow sent shockwaves reverberating across the city, shattering windows miles away and sending parked cars skidding into nearby rubble. But no matter how powerful the Hulk's strikes were, Juggernaut remained unshaken. His mystical armor absorbed the brunt of the force, and his body stood firm like an immovable monolith. Juggernaut retaliated with a ferocity that matched Hulk's rage. His punches landed with devastating precision, each one sending Hulk stumbling backward, shaking the ground with every step. But for every hit Juggernaut delivered, Hulk roared back with renewed anger. The Green Titan's strength only grew the angrier he became, and it was clear that this battle would not be won through brute strength alone. The battle raged on, moving from the streets into the heart of the city. The two titans crashed through skyscrapers, their massive frames toppling steel beams and shattering concrete like glass. A crowd of terrified onlookers watched from a safe distance, their phones capturing the spectacle of destruction. The world had never seen a clash of this magnitude before. Juggernaut, however, was far from intimidated. As the Hulk unleashed a particularly savage barrage of punches, Cain Marco dug his feet into the ground, planting himself like a mountain. The crimson gem of Sitarak glowed faintly, feeding him strength and resilience far beyond his physical limits. His lips curled into a smirk as he absorbed Hulk's blows without faltering. "You're strong," Juggernaut growled, his deep voice cutting through the chaos. "But strength without control is just wasted energy." Hulk snarled, his glowing green eyes narrowing. "Hulk needs no control. Hulk smash everything." And smash he did. With an earth-shattering roar, the Hulk ripped a chunk of the ground beneath him, hurling it at Juggernaut with the force of a cannonball. The massive slab of concrete and asphalt struck Juggernaut square in the chest, exploding on impact. Dust and debris filled the air, obscuring the battlefield. For a moment there was silence. The Hulk huffed, his chest heaving, waiting for the dust to settle. Then, like a freight train emerging from the fog, Juggernaut stepped forward, completely unscathed. His crimson armor gleamed under the dim light, and his massive frame was as steady as ever. "My turn," Juggernaut said simply. Before Hulk, could react, Juggernaut charged forward, his momentum unstoppable. The ground shook violently as he closed the distance between them in a blur of red and steel. His shoulder slammed into Hulk's torso, the impact so powerful that it sent the green giant flying through the air. Hulk's massive body crashed through 3 buildings before landing in the middle of a crumbling plaza. Hulk roared in frustration, forcing himself back to his feet. He had never faced an opponent like this before. Someone who could not only withstand his strength, but counter it with equal ferocity. His rage boiled over, and his muscles bulged as he prepared to launch himself at Juggernaut once again. But Juggernaut had been watching, studying. He knew that Hulk's strength was tied to his anger, and that the longer the fight dragged on, the stronger the green behemoth would become. Kane Marker was a brawler, yes, but he was no fool. He needed to outlast the Hulk, to wear him down and exploit his blind fury. As Hulk charged forward, Juggernaut sidestepped at the last moment, using his immense strength to grab Hulk by the arm. With a mighty heave, he swung the Hulk around like a wrecking ball, slamming him into the ground with enough force to create a massive crater. Hulk roared in pain and fury, clawing at the ground as he struggled to rise. "You're not the only one who knows how to smash," Juggernaut taunted, his voice dripping with confidence. The battle continued, but the tide had begun to turn. Hulk's movements grew slower, his punches less precise. His relentless rage, once his greatest asset, now became his undoing. Juggernaut exploited every opening, using his superior endurance and mystical resilience to outlast his opponent. For every hit Hulk landed, Juggernaut retaliated with 2, each one more devastating than the last. Finally, after what felt like hours of relentless combat, the Hulk staggered. His massive chest heaved as he struggled to catch his breath, his green skin slick with sweat and blood. His punches had lost their ferocity, and his roars had grown weaker. The unstoppable force of his rage had finally met its match. Juggernaut, still standing tall, took one final step forward. He grabbed Hulk by the shoulders, lifting the massive titan off the ground with ease. For a moment their eyes met, Hulk's filled with defiance, Juggernaut's with cold determination. "This is the difference between us," Juggernaut said, his voice low and steady. "You fight with anger, I fight with purpose." With that, he drove Hulk into the ground with a devastating slam, the impact creating a shockwave that rippled through the city. The ground beneath them cracked and buckled, and when the dust finally settled, only one titan remained standing. Juggernaut took a step back, his massive chest rising and falling as he surveyed the battlefield. Hulk lay unconscious at his feet, his massive frame battered and broken. The green giant, for all his strength and fury, had been defeated. As the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, Juggernaut turned and began to walk away, his crimson armor glinting in the light. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The world had witnessed his power, and there was no need for words. In the silence that followed, Bruce Banner's human form began to re-emerge, lying motionless amidst the rubble. For now, the Hulk had been subdued, but deep within, the beast still stirred, waiting for its chance to rise again. For Juggernaut, there was no celebration, no fanfare. He was the avatar of Sitarak, and his victory was simply another step in his endless journey as the unstoppable force.